In the classification of life's major screw-ups, there are three main levels. Level 1. Mistakes made due to inattention. Forgotten keys, mixing up your dentist appointment time, annoying but curable. Level 2. Blunders caused by total exhaustion. This is when you try to unlock your apartment door with your neighbor's intercom fob, or put an empty kettle on the stove. Level 3. Rare, exquisitely catastrophic errors that only happen because the universe suddenly decided to have some fun at your expense. These are the moments when the cosmos chooses you as the main character of its cruelest comedy show. My case fell into the Grand Prix category. I was 26 at the time. My body consisted of about 70% double espresso and 30% suppressed existential anxiety. I worked as an operations manager at Aura Creative, a mid-sized creative agency, which in human terms meant I was a professional firefighter for fires that other people fanned with incredible pomp. If a designer fell into a creative crisis and forgot about a deadline, I was the one begging the print shop to perform a miracle at 2 a.m. If a client demanded we make the logo more muscular, I was reworking the budgets. I was the invisible glue holding together this crazy, perpetually wobbling house of cards. And reigning over all this chaos, like an icy deity, was Evelyn Hart, my boss. A woman capable of entering a room on heels sharp enough to pierce concrete and making everyone present straighten up without even raising her voice. Evelyn was beautiful, with that relentless, almost surgical beauty that didn't invite flirtation, but demanded immediate surrender. Her voice, low, cool, and frighteningly precise, always sounded as if every sentence had undergone triple editing. After a year working under her, I had learned two things. 1, she was a strategic genius. 2, she scared me so much that my blood pressure monitor would start crying at the mere mention of her name. And since I am, apparently, an idiot with a fatal attraction to women capable of destroying my career with a single tilt of her head, I spent every meeting trying not to notice the extras. The way she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, or her perfume, cold as Arctic ice and expensive as a small country's annual budget. Thursday decided to finish me off completely. A client from warehouse logistics demanded more emotional clarity in a presentation, a phrase that, in polite society, should carry a prison sentence. 3 suppliers missed their shipments, and by 6:30 in the evening, I felt like I'd been run over by a truck. In my hands was a package of documents for the print shop, located in an old building with labyrinthine corridors. I took the elevator up, got off on my floor, and immediately sensed something was wrong. It was too quiet here. No hum of machinery. Instead, the air carried the dry, clean scent of oil paints, chalk, and plaster. The walls were covered in charcoal sketches, human torsos, intertwined hands, unfinished faces. I should have turned around. But curiosity is a sharp knife the universe presses to your throat. At the end of the corridor, a soft, almost intimate light spilled from a half-open door. Probably one of the printers working late, I thought. Spoiler. No, Daniel, not the printers. That's your social death. I pushed the door open, and my world didn't just stop spinning, it exploded. It was a life drawing studio. High ceilings, silence, the rustle of graphite on paper. A dozen students sat in a semicircle at their easels, and in the center, on a platform, under focused beams of light, Evelyn. Completely, utterly naked. For a second, my brain simply refused to name what it was seeing. That wasn't my boss. It was a masterpiece of lines and shadows. Light fell softly on the pale skin of her shoulders, accentuated the flawless curve of her spine and the long line of her legs. She stood motionless, her gaze directed somewhere through the walls. There was nothing vulnerable in this nudity. She looked even more commanding than in her usual business armor. And then my body decided to betray me. I made a sound. It wasn't a scream or a word. It was some pathetic, strangled wheeze of a man whose lungs had suddenly run out of oxygen. Pencils stopped. A dozen heads turned synchronously in my direction. And Evelyn turned too. She saw me. Right there. 5 meters from her pedestal. She didn't scream, didn't try to cover herself. She just froze. In her eyes, usually icy, I saw pure, wild, primal shock. We stared at each other for an eternity that lasted about 2 seconds. "Can I help you with something?" The instructor's voice rang out. "Help? Oh, yes. You could erase my memory or just shoot me out of mercy right here." Sorry, wrong door," I stammered, backing away and nearly knocking over an easel. I turned and fled into the corridor with the grace of a wounded boar. I didn't remember getting home. A thought pulsed in my head. I saw her. All of her. And then a worse one. She saw that I saw her. At home, I just sat on the hallway floor and stared at the wall. The dinner in the microwave remained untouched. Sleep wouldn't come. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the warm lamplight and that incredible silence where Evelyn owned the room. In the morning, I dressed for work with the care of a condemned man choosing his last meal. Shirt ironed to razor sharpness, tie perfect. I wanted to look dignified at my own professional funeral. When I entered the office, the air around me felt thick. "Daniel, my office, 5 minutes." Evelyn's voice came through the intercom. It sounded absolutely normal. No tremor, no rage, just an order. 5 minutes passed like slow motion. I entered her office and stopped at the threshold. Evelyn stood by the window, an impeccably tailored jacket sitting on her like armor. "Sit down, Daniel. You have the face of a man awaiting a death sentence." "And aren't I?" "No, you're awaiting consequences. Those are different categories." She finally raised her gaze to me. There was no rage in it, which I had expected. There was something more complex, a mixture of cold calculation and deep exhaustion. The click of the door closing behind me sounded like a rifle bolt. Evelyn's office always had an atmosphere of sterile superiority. The smell of expensive polished leather, the faint aroma of fresh espresso, and a complete absence of unnecessary objects. Even the air here seemed more disciplined. Evelyn didn't rush to sit down. She continued standing by the window, looking out at the city spread below like her personal chessboard. Her back was perfectly straight, that same back I had seen yesterday evening at a different angle and in completely different lighting. My brain treacherously tried to superimpose yesterday's image onto today's silk jacket, and I felt my shirt collar grow tight. "Sit down, Daniel. You're gripping the door handle so hard I'm starting to worry about the company's property." Her voice was cold and clean as ice in a glass of expensive whiskey. I walked to the chair, trying not to let my legs buckle too noticeably. "Before we move on to the agenda," she began, finally turning and slowly circling her desk, "we need to close the issue of yesterday's incident." I swallowed, feeling my pulse throb in my temples. "Evelyn, Be quiet." She raised one palm, and I fell silent instantly. "Excuses are unnecessary. You walked through the wrong door. It was a navigational error, caused, I presume, by your catastrophic inability to read floor numbers when fatigued. I don't think you were stalking me. Your face at that moment expressed a level of existential terror impossible to fake." She sat down in her chair and folded her hands before her. Her gaze bored into mine. This wasn't the look of an angry woman. It was the look of a surgeon deciding whether to amputate a limb or make do with a few stitches. However, the situation has changed. You now possess information not intended for office space. We have two options. First, you write a letter of resignation, I pay you a generous severance package, and we pretend we never knew each other. My heart skipped a beat. Quit? Leave now, when I was just beginning to understand how this business worked? And the second? My voice sounded surprisingly steady. Evelyn tilted her head slightly. The second option is more complicated. You stay. We continue working as if nothing happened. You look me in the eye during meetings, you prepare my reports, you argue with me about logistics, and in your head, complete, absolute emptiness regarding my hobbies outside of work. Are you capable of that level of professional amnesia? I looked at her. In her flawlessly made-up eyes, I searched for even a drop of mockery or weakness, but saw only a concrete wall of control. I can't unsee it, Evelyn. I'm not a robot, but I promise it won't affect my efficiency. I respect you, and it'll remain my personal secret. I know how to keep quiet. Respect is a currency that depreciates quickly, Daniel. I need performance. She opened a folder lying before her, signaling that the personal part of the audience was over. Fine, then forget the apologies. Apologies make you small, and I don't need a frightened clerk in operations. The Harlow campaign. The suppliers are dragging their feet on shipping the mock-up boards again. You have 2 hours to resolve this, or I'll personally visit their logistics department. You do know what happens to people after my visit, don't you? They usually switch to agriculture, I replied, feeling fear slowly replaced by familiar professional excitement. Exactly. Go to work. And, Daniel? I was almost at the door when her voice made me turn around. Try not to be weird. I'll try. Your "I'll try" doesn't inspire confidence, but it's the best we have for now. Dismissed. I left the office, and my lungs finally filled with oxygen. The execution was called off. But the moment I took a step onto the open-plan office carpet, I realized the world would never be the same. Every time Evelyn walked past my desk, I could feel her approach with the back of my head. The air around her seemed to grow denser. I heard the click of her heels and involuntarily remembered how yesterday she stood barefoot on a wooden platform, surrounded by silence and the smell of charcoal dust. An hour later, I received an email. A direct message from her, without CCing the secretary. Subject: Harlow. Body: the client claims their logo on the preview looks insufficiently ambitious. Find a way to explain to them that a company's ambitions don't depend on the point size of a headline. And get rid of that azure background. It reminds me of cheap hotels in the suburbs. P.S. The coffee in the reception area smells burnt today. Consider this a personal request. Fix it. I smiled at my monitor. This was a game. Our new strange frequency of communication. Subject: R.E. Harlow. Body: logo ambitiously enlarged by 2%, which they won't notice anyway, but will feel important. Background replaced with graphite. Coffee in reception has been executed and replaced with proper beans from the shop on the corner. Disaster averted. D. Her reply came 10 seconds later. Good boy. Keep it up. Jason from finance, a man whose main superpowers were gossip and the ability to ruin moods, sidled up to my desk with a mug. You and Hart. Did you sign a non-aggression pact? He squinted. Yesterday she didn't tear you apart for missing the deadline. She just nodded at you. That's scary, Daniel. People used to leave her office in tears after screw-ups like that. We've just found common ground on strategic issues, Jason. Try doing your work instead of monitoring other people's nods. Sure, he snorted. But keep this in mind. Your pupils dilate when she just walks down the hall. That's biology, pal. You can't fight it. I ignored him, but inside, everything clenched. If even an idiot like Jason noticed sparks, then we were on very thin ice. And that ice was starting to crack beneath my feet. Friday at Aura Creative usually resembled a battlefield after a cavalry charge. Mountains of empty coffee cups, scattered layouts, and a general atmosphere of scorched earth. By 8 in the evening, the noise had subsided. Almost all employees had deserted toward the nearest bars to wash away the memories of the work week. I remained alone in the open space, except for the golden rectangle of light falling from under Evelyn's office door. I was finishing a report, my fingers lazily dancing over the keys, while my brain already pictured a date with my couch and pizza. Suddenly, the building shuddered. It wasn't an explosion, but rather a deep, guttural sigh from an old giant. The lights flickered once, twice, and went out completely. The silence became absolute. The ventilation died, and in the stale office air, the distinct smell of ozone and an approaching thunderstorm emerged. After a few seconds, relays clicked, and dim, unsettling red emergency light strips glowed along the baseboards. The office instantly transformed into a set for a zombie apocalypse movie. Evelyn's office door opened. She stood in the doorway, backlit by her phone's flashlight. In that light, her silhouette seemed unreal, almost ghostly. "The elevators are dead," she stated. Her voice sounded unusually soft in this emptiness, having lost its metallic edge. "Looks like it." I turned on my own flashlight, slicing through the darkness. "The whole block is blacked out. Looks like the substation couldn't handle our client's ambitious logo." I walked over to her. Evelyn stood leaning against the doorframe, and I noticed she was holding her famous stiletto heels, the ones that normally added 5 centimeters to her height and 10 to her authority. "You're barefoot?" I couldn't help asking. She looked down at her feet, then at me. 12 floors down a concrete stairwell in the dark isn't a trial my ankles are willing to endure for fashion's sake, Daniel. And don't you dare make a Cinderella joke. That fairy tale has a very different ending. I wasn't going to, though I must admit, this is the most human thing I've seen in this office all week. We headed toward the fire exit. The stairwell greeted us with a hollow echo and the smell of dry plaster. I walked half a step ahead, lighting the steps. The red emergency light turned Evelyn's skin to pale marble, and the shadows under her eyes into deep pools. On the 8th floor, she suddenly stopped and exhaled heavily. "Damn. Tired?" "I'm dizzy. I barely ate today." I looked at her. In this half-darkness, she was no longer the ice queen of logistics. She was just an exhausted woman who had been carrying the weight of an entire company on her shoulders for too long. "Want to sit?" I suggested, pointing to a step. We sat down. The concrete was cold, but it didn't matter. The half-meter distance between us in that red gloom felt illusory. "Do you still think about it?" she asked quietly, staring into the darkness of the stairwell. "That evening in the studio?" I felt my mouth go dry. "Every spare minute, Evelyn. It's hard to ignore the fact that I faltered. "My vulnerability?" she prompted. "You know, Daniel, in that studio, I'm not the boss. I don't have to make decisions. I'm just form, line, light and shadow. It's the only place where I can be absolutely still and yet control nothing." I turned my head toward her. Her face was very close. "You know what's strange?" I said. "Seeing you there didn't make me stop being afraid of you professionally, but I stopped seeing you as a function. You became real, and that's far more dangerous to my productivity." Evelyn looked me straight in the eyes. "You're a strange man, Daniel. You've seen me naked, you're sitting with me on a dirty stairwell in a powerless building, and you're still addressing me formally." "It's called manners," I grinned. "Or self-preservation instinct." "Forget instincts," she whispered. We sat like that for a few more minutes. When we finally reached the lobby, my legs were slightly trembling, and not from physical exertion. Outside, it was raining, a thick, gray, typically autumn rain. The streets were clogged with cars flashing their hazard lights. The city seemed to have gone blind. "My car is in the underground garage," Evelyn said, looking at the streams of water. "And the gates are, of course, locked without power." "I'll give you a ride. My old Heap is parked on the street," I offered. My old car smelled of aged leather and mint candies. Evelyn settled into the passenger seat, tucking her bare feet under her. It was so intimate that my hands trembled on the steering wheel. The drive to her home took an eternity. We drove through a city devoid of traffic lights, navigating only by the headlights of other cars. The cabin was warm. Rain drummed on the windows, creating a cocoon where only the two of us existed. When we stopped at her luxury residential complex, she didn't rush to get out. "Daniel," she called after I'd already turned off the engine. "Yes?" "Why didn't you start respecting me less? Anyone else in your position would either start spreading gossip or get arrogant, thinking they had something on me." I turned to her. "Respect doesn't depend on clothing, Evelyn. I've seen you work. I've seen you take hits. And what I saw in the studio, that was just art. And art can't be used as blackmail." She reached out and touched my shoulder, literally for a second. "Try to get some sleep tomorrow, and thank you for the navigation." She got out of the car, putting on her heels as she walked, and disappeared behind the entrance door. I sat in the dark for a long time, listening to the engine cool, understanding that a chapter of my life called Just Work had just ended. The following week at the office was like the calm before the storm. Evelyn and I had returned to our previous rhythm, but now every interaction between us had a hidden frequency. We stopped using the corporate messenger for small talk. Our correspondence moved to personal emails, and its tone had changed. From Evelyn Hart to Daniel. Subject: Friday. I caught myself looking at your tie knot for more than 3 seconds during today's meeting. That's an unforgivable waste of time. Fix it. I replied a minute later. The tie will be replaced with a bow tie. Let's see how that affects departmental productivity. An hour later, she came into my workspace. It was 6 in the evening. The office was nearly empty. She approached from behind and placed her hand on my shoulder. Her fingers were cold, but I felt a wave of heat travel through my shirt and across my body. "We're making a catastrophically wrong decision in very slow motion, Daniel," she said, almost in a whisper. I slowly turned in my chair. Evelyn looked me point blank. Her gaze was dark and unreadable. "What exactly do you mean?" "About us. About what's happening between us. This violates every conceivable company rule. It's a risk to my reputation and your career. We're on the edge, beyond which there is no professionalism, only chaos." "I know," I replied, feeling my heart pounding somewhere in my throat. "But I think the point of no return was passed on that 3rd floor. We're not the same people we were anymore." She reached for my tie and loosened the knot slightly. It was the movement of a predator who knows exactly that the prey isn't going anywhere. I have spent my whole life building a career on control. I hate losing. But in this argument with myself, I seem to have been defeated. She kissed me. It wasn't like a romantic movie scene. It was like 2 trains colliding at full speed. Hard, commanding, with the taste of coffee and 2 weeks of accumulated tension. Her lips demanded surrender, and I gave in instantly. When she pulled back, her breathing was ragged, and her cheeks glowed with an unfamiliar blush. That was... I tried to find a word. "Unprofessional," she cut in, instantly returning to her boss mask, though her lips were still moist. "Now go home, Daniel, and wear a different tie tomorrow. One that won't remind me how I just lost my composure." After that kiss in the office, the weekend arrived, which I spent in a state of mild concussion. I tried 3 times to watch a movie, only to find myself staring at a single spot on the wall, trying to process how my life had turned into a plot for which HR would give me a black mark. On Monday, I came to work 15 minutes early. I ironed my shirt so sharply you could cut yourself on its collar, and wore that safe blue tie that evoked no associations with loss of control. Evelyn appeared at 10. She walked through the open space like an icebreaker through Arctic slush, cold, flawless, in a dark gray pantsuit. Not a single muscle on her face betrayed the fact that 3 days ago, she had stood in my workspace loosening my tie. She nodded at me, exactly 1 degree, like any ordinary employee, and disappeared into her office. 10 minutes later, I received an email. From Evelyn Hart. Subject, Harlow status. Daniel, come by in 5 minutes. Bring the logistics printouts. We need to look like we're discussing budget holes, not anything else. And stop sitting there looking like you've swallowed a crowbar. It attracts attention. I took a deep breath, grabbed a folder, and walked to the scaffold. When I closed her office door, Evelyn didn't even look up from her monitor. Sit down, and put the folder on the desk so it's visible through the glass wall. I sat. The silence was so thick you could cut it with a knife. Evelyn finally leaned back in her chair and looked at me. There wasn't a trace of that softness I'd seen in the car. We have a problem, Daniel, she began in a low, even voice. Only one? Don't be a smartass. The problem is that we're adults who made a choice, but that choice is incompatible with the architecture of this building. If anyone finds out, my reputation as an impartial leader will be destroyed, and you'll be seen as a careerist who paved his way through certain circumstances. Evelyn, I'm not planning to run through the office with a banner, I replied, leaning forward. I understand the risks perfectly. No, you don't. She stood and began pacing the room. You don't understand how quickly an office environment turns any spark into a fire. Jason is already watching. Melissa is whispering. We need rules. Even more rules? Yes. Rule 1. In the office, we are strangers connected only by KPIs. No lingering looks, no accidental meetings at the water cooler. Rule 2. All communication outside of work goes through personal channels. Rule 3. She paused, stopping in front of me. Rule 3. We won't pretend that kiss didn't happen, because that would make us liars, and I hate bad acting. She stepped closer, too close for an office with glass walls. But tonight, she lowered her voice to a dangerous minimum. I want you to come to my place, not as my manager, and not as the man who walked through the wrong door. She recited the address. At 8. Don't be late. I don't like to wait. Evelyn Hart's apartment was exactly as I had imagined it. Minimalist high-tech, panoramic windows overlooking the city lights, and a silence that felt like luxury. There wasn't a single unnecessary detail. Everything, from the designer lamps to the book spines on the shelves, obeyed a strict order. She opened the door dressed in simple home clothes, silk trousers and a top. Without makeup and high heels, she seemed almost like that woman from the art studio, but her gaze still held that steel I was used to in the office. Come in, wine is on the table. We sat in the kitchen, which looked like an operating room. It was that clean. Evelyn drank her wine, staring out the window. You know, she said suddenly, I've thought a lot about why you. I have dozens of people under me, more ambitious, more experienced, but you're the only one who doesn't try to curry favor with me, even now. Maybe I'm just too tired from work to also pretend at home? I grinned. Or maybe you're just too honest for this business, Daniel, and that's your greatest weakness. And mine too. That evening, we barely talked about work. I learned that Evelyn hates corporate receptions, loves old jazz, and started drawing because it was the only way to make her brain shut up for at least an hour. In the office, I'm a function, she said, twirling her glass. I'm a mechanism that must produce results. The studio is the only place where I can just be human, stripped of everything, literally. I walked over to her and carefully touched her hand. You don't always have to be made of steel, Evelyn. At least not with me. She looked at me, and in her eyes I saw that very emotional transparency our client had so vainly sought. That's the most dangerous proposition anyone has ever made me. That night, boundaries were finally erased. There were no office partitions, charts, or subordination in her bedroom. There was only silence, broken by breathing, and the realization that we were both falling into the abyss without parachutes. Tuesday morning was brutal. Waking up in the same bed as your boss, and an hour later discussing logistics costs with her, that was cognitive dissonance of the highest order. You leave first, Evelyn said, putting on her armor before the mirror. I'll arrive in half an hour. And, Daniel, wear a tie. Today's an important investor meeting. In the office, everything was the same, but for me, every sound was louder. I felt like a spy behind enemy lines. Jason from finance ambushed me at lunch. Buddy, you look like a man who either won the lottery or sold his soul to the devil. Your face is shining like a freshly polished monocle. It's just vitamins, Jason, and good sleep. Lie more. You called Hart Evelyn twice today in front of the interns. Luckily, they were too terrified of her to notice. But I heard. I went cold. You're imagining things. Oh no, Daniel. I'm not imagining. I have a nose for these things. You know what this is called? Professional suicide in romantic tones. Be careful. She'll eat you for breakfast when she gets bored playing. The rest of the day, I couldn't concentrate. Jason's words itched in my brain like a bothersome fly. I realized he was right. The power balance in our relationship was catastrophically uneven. She was at the top, I was at the bottom. And any move we made could bring the whole structure crashing down. In the evening, I went to her office to sign documents. We were alone. You're nervous, she stated, signing papers. Jason suspects something. Evelyn paused for a moment, her pen hovering over the page. Then she slowly raised her gaze. So, are you afraid of Jason? I'm afraid of what will happen when our secret becomes public. We won't be able to just keep working. Evelyn stood up, walked to the door, and locked it. Then she returned to the desk, sat on its edge, and gestured for me to come closer. Listen to me carefully, Daniel. The world is full of Jasons waiting for us to stumble. But I don't build my life based on their expectations, and I advise you not to either. She took hold of my shirt collar. If you want to stop, say so now. I'll sign your recommendations, and you'll find a job at another firm by tomorrow morning. But if you stay, you have to be ready to fight. I don't want to leave, I replied, looking her straight in the eye. Then stop being a frightened little boy. Be the man who walked into my life and made me feel alive. She kissed me, this time slowly, almost gently. But that kiss still carried the commanding quality that had made her the head of Aura Creative. A year passed. The Aura Creative office was still noisy, Melissa still grumbled, and Jason still tried to spy. But now everything was different. Evelyn and I no longer hid, at least not so desperately. After I received a promotion for the brilliant Harlow campaign, which, honestly, we discussed more in bed than in the office, we decided it was time to dot the I's. Of course, it caused a scandal. There were whispers, sidelong glances, even a summons before the board of directors. But Evelyn simply laid our profit charts for the past year on the table and said, if anyone's personal feelings prevent them from seeing these numbers, perhaps they should seek employment at less efficient companies. There were no more questions. Now I sit in my new office. On my desk is a framed photo, a seashore, a sunset, and Evelyn laughing, utterly relaxed. There's a knock at the door. It's a new employee from marketing, a bright blonde who clearly thinks flirtation is the best way to get a budget signed. "Daniel, I'm having a little trouble with some documents. Maybe we could discuss it over dinner? I know a very private place." I don't even look up. "Leave the documents on the desk, Sandy." "And about dinner? I already have plans for the next 50 years. And trust me, my handler is the most jealous and effective woman in this city. You don't want to become her next personnel restructuring project." The girl snorts and leaves. A minute later, the door opens again, without a knock. Evelyn enters, closes the door behind her, and leans against it. Flirting again? Attempting to, but I have iron immunity. "Good boy. Let's go home. And, Daniel." "Yes?" "Tomorrow there's an exhibition at the art school. I'm showing a few of my pieces." I smile, stand up, and grab my jacket. "I hope they're wearing clothes?" Evelyn smirks that trademark icy smile, which now holds so much warmth it could heat our entire block. "Come and see. But fair warning, if you make that wheezing sound again, I'm firing you." We leave the office arm in arm. Jason watches us go with a look that now holds only pure, undiluted respect. And I think about how life really is an art form. The main thing is not to be afraid of getting the floor wrong, because sometimes, behind the scariest door, lies exactly what you've been searching for your whole life.
I was running on espresso and bad decisions, printing deadlines, client revisions, floor numbers blurred, my brain went dead. Took one wrong turn and lost my head. Charcoal walls and quiet lights, I opened up the door to my professional demise. There you were, like a masterpiece, and I forgot how to breathe. You looked at me like, "Don't you dare." I backed out, falling down the stairs. Next day you called me to your room like, "Daniel, welcome to your doom." You said, "Forget what you have seen." But how do I delete that scene? You in the light, me in disgrace. HR can't save me from your face. I walked through the wrong door, now I can't go back anymore. You were all high heels, cold eyes, now you're stuck inside my mind. Wrong door, right disaster, my heart keeps beating faster. Boss lady, bad idea, but I want you, right here. Wrong door, wrong door, one mistake and I'm yours. Wrong door, wrong door, I don't wanna be professional anymore. Monday morning shirt too tight, trying not to die under fluorescent lights. You wrote, "Fix Harlow, change the blue." P.S. burnt coffee bothers me too. I changed the background, saved the day. You wrote, "Good boy," and I lost my way. Jason said my pupils lied. Guess biology picked a side. Then the power died at 8, red lights glowing in the stairway. Barefoot queen with heels in hand. Suddenly I understood the plan. You said the studio lets you breathe. I said you're real, and that scares me. Rain on glass, your hand on mine. We crossed another dotted line. I walked through the wrong door, now I can't go back anymore. You were all high heels, cold eyes, now you're stuck inside my mind. Wrong door, right disaster, my heart keeps beating faster. Boss lady, bad idea, but I want you, right here. Wrong door, one mistake and I'm yours. Wrong door, I don't wanna be professional anymore. You said rules keep us alive. I said sure, but not tonight. You loosened up my careful tie and kissed me like career suicide. Glass walls, locked doors, emails we can't send from work, KPIs and late night can't go back.